Joining me right now for our Power Hour is former Georgia Congressman and House Speaker Newt Gingrich and former Georgia Congressman and Georgia Judiciary Committee ranking member Doug Collins. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Kick us off here. Your reaction to President Trump posting that money.
Well, look, I think it's remarkable that he can do it, but it's even more remarkable that the Biden administration is presiding over an effort to destroy their opponent by financially destroying him. I mean, there's no question that Trump's not running against Biden. Trump is running against an entire machine. And the whole machine is doing everything it can to undermine and weaken President Trump. So, in a sense, this is a victory, but it's a victory that shouldn't even be occurring. I mean, no normal American would be under this kind of assault. It's a deliberate political effort to, in a sense, financially kill him and cripple him so he can't really be an effective candidate. Every American should be worried, because if they can do this to Donald Trump, they can do it to you.
Yeah. So the question is, will they be successful, Newt? I mean, look, there may very well be a trial before the election that he will go and be on trial and perhaps get a very, one-sided jury.
Well, I think the whole question is whether or not the American people decide that this is a legitimate legal process or that this is a political destruction effort. And it's much closer to Putin or to Fidel Castro or to the current dictatorship in Venezuela. This is an effort by the democratic machine at the state level, the local level, and the federal level to destroy their opponent, because they know that he is currently the front runner, and they know that he's likely to win and take back the White House. And that is so frightening to them. And so the question is, at a bigger level, do all these things end up convincing Americans, yes, we have to elect Trump purely to clean up a corrupt system, or do they decide that Trump's the problem? So far, every indication is that they're getting more and more alienated from Biden and more angry about the Democratic machine's clear illegality. These things they're just clearly illegal.
Exactly. Meanwhile, you talk about that and this constant attack on President Trump. Let's just look at President Biden's agenda. I want to point out that we're at the lows of the morning this morning, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average right now down 213 points. Stocks are plummeting as oil prices are rising. Oil prices right now at the highest level since October. You've got crude oil at $85 a barrel, Newt. And this is a direct result of, the policies coming out of this administration, which is pretty much shutting off fossil fuel. We're up 1 1/3% on oil, and this is off of the highest levels of the morning.
Well, look, I mean, the fact is, left-wing ideas don't work. They're not working in Europe, where there's a constant movement. They weren't working in Turkey, where the Erdogan regime just got virtually wiped out in the local elections. And I think they don't work here. Biden has made a commitment, which is very interesting historically, to create a socialist, anti-religious party. He is doubling and tripling down on unifying the weird left, frankly. And those policies of that movement are just profoundly out of touch with reality. We are the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. We could easily be supplying Western Europe with liquefied natural gas. We could easily be driving down the price. I said this when Obama was president. The left has policies that hurt normal Americans, and normal Americans, I think, understand that.
They write about a, quote, confidential memo circulated among top Democrat donors, which has sparked a furious debate in Democrat circles about whether to narrow the focus of voter registration efforts to avoid signing up likely Republicans. The memo reportedly states, quote, if we were to blindly register non-voters and get them on rolls, we would be distinctly aiding Trump's quest for a personal dictatorship. Data shows unregistered voters are shifting more toward the GOP than in the past. Newt, really interesting development here. Your thoughts?
Well, I think you're seeing a Trump coalition emerging, which, if it's successful, will replace the Roosevelt coalition for the first time since 1932. Trump is attracting people for a lot of reasons, partly because the weird Democrats really are totally unacceptable culturally to vast numbers of African Americans and Latinos, partially because the performance of Biden, the numbers you showed earlier of people who have been hurt by the Biden administration economically, younger people who might not be offended by some of the weird ideas, but they're offended that they can't buy a car, they can't get a job, they can't afford to get groceries. And so there's been a huge shift among younger Americans based on performance. They can't afford Joe Biden. So I do think something very big is happening, and I think that it's a test of whether or not the machine will be able to hold on despite the American people drifting towards Donald Trump and rejecting Joe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weaponization of federal agencies to center his political opponents. Watch what he said on CNN last night. Watch.
When people talk about the threat to democracy that Trump poses, do you really think that that is an equal evil to Biden?
I mean, listen, I can make the argument that President Biden is a much worse threat to democracy.
Bingo. He said what everybody knows. Joe Biden is a bigger threat to democracy, given his plans to censor speech, his plans to pack the Supreme Court. Newt, how do you see it?
Well, I think, first of all, to have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say it means on the left a huge problem, because lots of people instinctively are going to identify with him, and he's telling the truth. You talk to the no labels people, they'll tell you everywhere they've been, the Democrats have actively tried to keep them off the ballot. And I cannot overstate that this is a campaign between a corrupt Democratic machine and Donald Trump. It's not a campaign between Biden and Trump. Biden wouldn't have a chance if it was only him. But the machine is enormous. And ironically, the last president to lose and get reelected was Grover Cleveland. He rose by taking on corruption in Tammany Hall Democratic politics, and he made famous the term, they loved him for the enemies he made. The fact is, Trump is in the same position. He's taking on total corruption. Robert Kennedy is exactly right, and I think having him say it is going to validate for a lot of young people that the Biden system is a remarkably corrupt system.
200 migrants now charged with rioting after attacking the Texas National Guard at the El Paso border last month. The El Paso Country Sheriff's Office saying about 36 have been processed for release into ICE custody. Texas Governor Greg Abbott posted this on X overnight. ICE confirmed it is getting custody of all those charged with rushing the border and will start deportation proceedings against all of them. Send them back, writes Governor Abbott. Meanwhile, guess who the White House is blaming for all of the border chaos? Watch.
Most of the border crossers accused of beating up Texas National Guardsmen in a riot last month were released on their own recognizance Sunday. How does that make people in this country any safer?
There is a challenge at the border, right? Our immigration system has been broken for decades, even before this president became president. And this president, a couple months ago, worked with the Senate in a bipartisan fashion to get a negotiation done, right? And what we saw is from the last president, President Trump, told Republicans in Congress not to move forward with this negotiation, this agreed plan, this agreed proposal, because it would help Joe Biden. President Trump got in the way, and because President Trump got in the way, Republicans are now getting in the way.
Newt, do you think anybody's buying this?
Sure, if you're on the hard left. I mean, the hard left lives in an echo chamber. They talk to themselves. They live in an alternative reality. The fact is, the Biden illegal immigration policy is working for Biden. Millions of people are entering the United States illegally. The New York City Council has now asked the state Supreme Court to allow illegals to vote in the city elections. Imagine they schedule an election on presidential election day, and under New York law, you're now going to have several 100,000 illegal immigrants allowed to vote. Since the Attorney General is opposed to any kind of identification, how are you going to know who they vote for and whether or not they vote for president? They also, under current law, all of these illegal immigrants count towards the next census. So if you're California and New York and you're losing American citizens, you may be able to sustain your position in the census by gaining illegal immigrants. The whole thing is nuts. And what they're asking us to believe is that the people presiding over this are innocent, and the people who have not been in charge, and by the way, who were successful in stopping illegal immigration when they were in charge, it's really their fault. I think that she may be the least believable press secretary in history, but that's because she has the least believable president.